Okay, today we are diving deep into what is really a red alert for childcare in Ohio. Now, on the surface, the numbers might not seem totally catastrophic, but when you dig into the state data from the last couple of years, wow, it reveals a system that isn't just shrinking. It's fundamentally and honestly dangerously transforming from the inside out. It's a story of hidden chaos that's affecting thousands and thousands of families.
So let's just start with the number that just stops you in your tracks 16 and a half times. Since mid 2024, the rate that childcare programs are shutting down in Ohio has accelerated by 16.5x. I mean, that is not a leak, that is a flood. What used to be a slow trickle of closures has turned into an absolute torrent. It feels like the emergency brakes on the entire system have just completely failed.
But that acceleration, as shocking as it is, it's really just the tip of the iceberg. The real story here isn't just about providers disappearing. No, it's about what's replacing them. And maybe more importantly, what isn't. We're seeing this hidden restructuring that has massive implications for families, for the quality of care, and for who can even get access to it in the first place. So let's start with this first piece of the puzzle, what the data is calling the Great Childcare Churn. This is where we have to look past those neat and tidy official numbers and really get into the chaos that's bubbling up underneath. If you just glanced at the official state data, you'd probably see this number, a net loss of 254 licensed programs. It doesn't really sound like a five-alarm fire, does it? I mean, it's a decline, sure, but maybe not a full-blown crisis? And that is exactly the question we need to be asking, because that little net number, that negative 244, it's dangerously misleading. It's actually masking a much, much more volatile and chaotic reality. The reality is this. That tiny net loss of 254 programs was actually the result of almost 1,300 providers vanishing, while just over 1,000 new ones popped up. Just think about that for a second. That's over 2,200 programs in constant motion. This isn't a bucket with a small leak. It's a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom while someone's desperately trying to refill it from the top. The instability is just immense. And this chaos, it has a name. It's called childcare churn. It's this incredibly high rate of both closing and opening at the same time. For a family, what this means is that the trusted provider they've relied on for years can just vanish overnight. And maybe they're replaced by a new, completely unknown option. In Ohio, this churn has hit a staggering 27.6% turnover rate in less than 2 years. Now, this churn isn't happening evenly across the board. When we dig in a little deeper, the data reveals what looks like two entirely different systems with drastically different futures. And it starts with the outright collapse of home-based care. And this chart just lays out the divide perfectly. Look at the bar on the left. That's Type B family childcare homes, the smaller in-home providers. They've absolutely plummeted with a net loss of 276. Now look at the bar on the right, the larger institutional license centers. They're actually showing a small net gain. And this, right here, is the crisis in miniature. One part of the system is in total freefall, while the other gives this false impression of stability. And let me tell you, the loss of these home-based providers is nothing short of catastrophic. It's a nearly 15% decline, with over 500 of them closing their doors for good. And these are not just numbers on a chart. These are often the only option for families in rural Ohio, for parents who have infants, or for people who work second or third shift. When one of these providers disappears, they often aren't replaced by anything at all. So what about that small growth in centers? Is that the silver lining here? Well, the source analysis is really clear. Absolutely not. That small net gain, it hides its own extraordinary churn. It is not a stable sector. And when you look at the details of that churn, an even deeper problem starts to emerge. Which brings us to the next, and I think perhaps the most disturbing layer of this whole crisis, quality. It turns out it's not just the type of care that's changing, it's the verifiable quality of that care. Ohio appears to be systematically trading known, rated providers for a flood of unknown, unrated ones. Just look at this chart. It shows the system-wide shift. The number of unrated programs has surged by almost 43%. And at the exact same time, look at what's happening to the rated providers. 1-star and 2-star programs are just collapsing. The entire middle of the quality spectrum is being hollowed out, leaving this huge gap between a few top-rated providers and this flood of new unrated ones. And this slide right here shows that trade-off in stark detail. On the left, you can see the centers that closed. They had a pretty diverse mix of quality ratings, but look at the right. Look at the new centers that opened. A staggering 75% of them are completely unrated. Let that sink in. We are actively swapping providers who have a proven track record for a wave of new operations with no measured quality whatsoever. So this hollowing out of the middle, it suggests what the source is calling a quality cliff. It might be that it's just becoming economically or operationally impossible for providers to maintain those basic 1- or 2-star ratings. So their choice becomes either closing down for good or just giving up their rating entirely and joining the massive ranks of the unrated. So all of this, the churn, the collapse of home-based care, and the vanishing quality ratings, it all comes together in our final section, the creation of these widening care deserts, where a family's zip code now pretty much determines if they have any options at all. And what's really shocking is where the biggest losses are happening. This isn't just a rural issue. Ohio's largest urban counties are getting hit the hardest. Cuyahoga County, which is where Cleveland is, has lost a net of 50 programs. Hamilton County, with Cincinnati, is down 45. The childcare infrastructure is shrinking even in the biggest cities.
This creates what we can call the urban-rural paradox. Get this, 58 out of Ohio's 88 counties have lost programs. In the cities, even if a shiny new center opens, it might be miles away from a neighborhood where several smaller, home-based providers just shut down. But in rural areas, the math is simpler and, honestly, more brutal. When you lose the one provider in town, you lose everything.
Which brings us to the final critical question here. The data we've just walked through shows a system where access is shrinking, quality is vanishing, and stability is basically a memory. So the question for Ohio, and really for any community facing this, isn't just about childcare numbers. It's about what happens to families, to the workforce, to entire communities when this fundamental pillar of society just crumbles all at once.